Hello everyone, we are happy to bring an exclusive environmental series based on the current UPSC trends. Considering the weightage given to environment-based questions in the previous preliminary examination, we are offering this course. We assure you that this series would be helpful in scoring well in the coming prelims 2022. Without further delay, let's hop into the video. Environment Series Prelims 2022 Learning 1. In this Learning 1, we will be understanding what the protected areas are and the different components, features of a protected areas. Let's look at protected areas. What are protected areas? They are a geographical space recognized, dedicated and managed through legal effective manner for long-term conservation of nature. So the two key words we have to remember here are a geographical space and long-term conservation of nature. Who defines protected areas? It is IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature. This organization gives a well-defined definition of protected areas which is globally accepted. In its categorization guidelines, it clearly defines what comes under protected areas. In the world, there are different kinds of protected areas. Why are there different kinds of protected areas? The two main reasons are because the world geography is so unique and eclectic that different countries follow their own protected laws. And different international organizations put in different regulations of it for conserving nature. So the protection laws of each country and the regulations of international organizations have resulted in different kinds of protected areas. Let's look at the protected areas IUCN declares: national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, community reserves, marine protected areas. These 5 are the major protected areas which IUCN declares or defines. Apart from these 5, there are 2 other major areas which come under protected areas. First one is marine protected areas and transboundary protected areas. What are marine protected areas? These marine protected areas are part of an ocean where they feel that that part contains very unique and endangered natural elements. Therefore, that part of ocean or sea needed to be protected. Such areas come under marine protected areas. Then comes transboundary protected areas. The name itself says transboundary. So these are areas which overlap between multiple countries and they come under the purview of, therefore these transboundary areas they overlap between multiple countries. Therefore the boundaries of these protected areas are removed and inside inside this protected area there will be conservation and protection of the nature which is present in this area. So the removal of border is there and this area will be protected, which is between 2 or multiple countries. This transboundary protected areas also play a major role in the conservation of natural resources. National parks. What are national parks? These are an exclusive area which can either be part of a sanctuary, outside a sanctuary. So a national park is an area within or outside a sanctuary which has certain significance. What is that significance? It should be ecological, faunal, floral, geomorphological or zoological importance associated to this particular area. Then it is declared as a national park. What is the purpose of a national park? Why do we have national parks? The two main reasons are to protect and to propagate the wildlife therein, its environment. So basically, to protect the very exclusively available or the conservation of this area, we have national parks. Who declares what a national park is? Which area will be declared as a national park and who will decide it? It is the state government. The state government draws its powers from Wildlife Protection Act 1972 to either fix or alter the boundaries of a national park. And the state government, prior to declaring the boundaries of a national park, it should consult and take the approval of the National Board of Wildlife. A National Board of Wildlife. What is this altering and fixing the boundaries? Why is it necessary? Let's take a case. For example, in recent times, the Chhattisgarh government have appealed to the Supreme Court to reduce the area of Lemru Elephant Reserve, which is a part of Hasdeo Aranya Forest. Why do the Chhattisgarh government want to reduce the area of this elephant reserve? So Lemru Elephant Reserve in Chhattisgarh contains certain coal mines. Due to this area of national park, these coal mines are left unused. Therefore, the Chhattisgarh government want to alter the area and use these coal mines in their best possible ways. So in such cases, the state government can alter or reduce or increase the area of a national park. Human activity. No human activity is allowed inside a national park except in certain cases where the Chief Wildlife Warden's permission is necessary. The Chief Wildlife Warden draws his or her powers from the Chapter 4 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. And what are these exceptions of human activity will be discussed later in the coming slides. Wildlife sanctuaries. What are wildlife sanctuaries? They are an area other than the area comprised with any reserve forest or the territorial waters. A sanctuary is something which is outside the reserve forest or the territorial waters. And same like national park, a sanctuary should be having a significance of ecological, faunal, floral and natural significance. And the purpose of a sanctuary again is to propagate and protect the wildlife within that particular area, which is very unique only to that area. Then comes notifying authority. The state government notifies or decides, alters the boundaries of a sanctuary. Human activity. Unlike national park where no human activity is allowed except in certain conditions, wildlife sanctuaries, there are restricted human activities allowed, and again the issuing authority would be the Chief Wildlife Warden, who draws his power from Chapter 4 Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Then comes marine protected areas. As we see, the name itself indicates what it is, marine, something which is related to sea or ocean. Let's see what marine protected areas are. These are nothing but if there's a sea and a part of the sea is declared as marine protected areas, because this part or this small area is having a historic marine resources and which needs to be conserved. So a part of an ocean or sea is declared as a marine protected areas. And what is the purpose of this declaration of this part of ocean? So there are three major purpose of MPA. One is economic resources, biodiversity conservation, and species protection. Notifying authority. Who notifies us which area comes under MPA? It can be the local government, the state, territorial, native, regional, or national authorities. They can declare an area as protected areas, and they all work together in this area, which is declared as MPA or marine protected areas, would be stringently restricted or regulated compared to the surrounding waters. Conservation reserves and community reserves. What are these reserves? Basically, these reserves act as a buffer zone between two or more protected areas. Per se, there are two protected areas, which can either be two national parks, two sanctuaries, one sanctuary, one national park, or any other protected areas. So, these community reserves are the buffer zones between these protected areas. Let's say these two are sanctuaries. And the area between them, which is mostly owned by the government of India or the states, this land will be declared as a community or conservation reserves. And this area, which acts as a buffer zone, has certain private lands which the government gives to the people for sustenance. So there might be a community or communities living near the protected areas which use this private lands for their sustenance. Therefore, because there is usage of private lands with usage of this land, it is necessary to protect and conserve these areas which act as a buffer zone or the migration corridors of this wildlife in these protected areas. Hence, we have these conservation reserves. And this conservation and community reserves were added as protected zones in the Wildlife Amendment Act of 2002. Wildlife Amendment Act 2002. In 2002, the Wildlife Amendment Act have declared these two reserves as protected areas. And the reason why we have these areas is that because there is reduction in protection in and around existing or proposed protected areas. Because the private lands are involved, the protection for the entire reserve is necessary. And who declares this conservation reserves? It is the state government again. The state government declares which area acts as buffer zone and comes under conservation reserve. And the unique feature of this reserves are that it is the first private lands which have been accorded protection under the Indian legislature. And administration of these reserve is done by the local people and local agencies like the Gram Panchayat. Because people use these private lands for the sustenance, the local people themselves are involved in conserving the whole conservation reserve or community reserve. And human activity is allowed only in the private owned lands, and the rest of the land which is owned by the government would be not allowing any human activity. Chapter 4 Wildlife Protection Act. We have given Chapter 4 Wildlife Protection Act exclusively because it is from this chapter which plays an important role in declaring and the functioning of the protected areas. Firstly, the Wildlife Protection Act consists of 60 sections, 6 schedules, which are divided into 8 chapters. In these 8 chapters, 4th chapter grants powers to Chief Wildlife Warden to give permissions for certain human activities in these protected areas. It is very important to understand how the Chief Wildlife Warden plays an important role in conserving the protected areas. And what are these permissions and what kind of permissions are given? First, study of wildlife, scientific research, photography, the transaction of any lawful business with persons residing inside, and tourism. For example, if you see Jim Corbett National Park, which is present in Uttarakhand, we can see that they promote lot. We can see that there are a lot of tourism which happens in Jim Corbett National Park, like safari and other touristic attractions which are present in this national park. So such touristic and scientific research permissions are given by the chief wildlife warden in the protected areas. Therefore, this plays an important role in understanding protected areas. And coming to the schedules, these schedules are very important in Wildlife Protection Act because this schedule consists of species which have to be protected and preserved by the government. So these schedules are very important because they mention all the species in the country which are endangered and need protection and utmost care. Therefore, these schedules play an important role in understanding protected areas too. Thank you. I hope this video helps you in understanding what protected areas are, and in the coming series we will be understanding more comprehensively what protected areas are in different states of India. Thank you so much.